TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcasting to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warns that the Islamic Republic of Iran had deployed precision missiles to Yemen with the aim of attacking Israel. Russian and Turkish forces have started patrolling a narrow corridor of some 10 kilometers, equal to 6.2 miles, along the Syrian-Turkish border. The United States will strengthen its military presence in eastern Syria with mechanized forces to prevent America's enemies from accessing oil fields and revenues. The Israel Defense Forces concluded an extensive summary that included a review of the military Northern Command's preparations for operations, specifically during the month of August when tensions rose to the point of looming hostilities between Israel and Lebanon's Iranian proxy Hezbollah. According to a statement by the IDF spokesperson's unit, Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Aviv Kochavi concluded that the IDF's combat preparations had achieved their objectives and that all of the identified errors have been addressed. In tandem, the state of alert has been raised in several Israeli diplomatic missions around the world for fear of Iranian-sponsored terror attacks. Beyond the apparent mounting of tensions with the Islamic Republic, a number of intelligence warnings about possible attacks against Israeli embassies and consulates prompted the decision to raise the state of alert. Meanwhile, a week after IDF Chief of Staff Aviv Kochavi warned that the situation in the northern and southern sectors of Israel was tense and fragile and is liable to devolve into a military conflagration, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned last night that the Islamic Republic of Iran has begun deploying precision-guided missiles to Yemen for the purpose of attacking the Jewish state. Speaking alongside visiting U.S. Secretary of the Treasury Steven Mnuchin at the Prime Minister's Bureau in Jerusalem, Netanyahu seized the opportunity to reiterate his repeated warnings about Tehran's efforts to deploy precision-guided weaponry across the Middle East.
Iran is seeking to develop now precision-guided missiles that can hit any target in the Middle East with a circumference of 5 to 10 meters. They're developing this in Iran. They want to place them in Iraq and in Syria, and to convert Lebanon's arsenal of 130,000 statistical rockets to precision-guided munitions. They seek also to develop that, and have already begun to put that in Yemen with the goal of reaching Israel from there too.
Netanyahu also re-emphasized Jerusalem's position in which it views Iran as the single greatest threat to regional peace and stability.
We view Iran as the greatest threat to peace, stability, and our security, and the security of many others. They've fired into Saudi Arabia. They've interfered with the international shipping lanes. They've attacked Americans, and they've killed Americans throughout the last 10 years in Afghanistan and elsewhere. Iran is the single greatest threat to stability and peace in the Middle East.
Taking the Islamic Republic's malign aspirations and activities into consideration, Prime Minister Netanyahu urged Secretary Mnuchin to apply more pressure on the Ayatollah regime.
Iran's capacity, we see this very clearly, to launch its aggression, to develop its weapons of death, to purvey its menacing ways, that capacity is diminished to the extent that you can tighten your sanctions and make the availability of cash more difficult for them. We see this in every part of the Middle East. So I want to thank you for what you've been doing and encourage you, Steve, to do more, a lot more.
Responding to the Israeli Prime Minister's plight, the top American treasurer praised Washington's partnership with Jerusalem, comparing it to no other. With regard to the U.S. maximum pressure campaign against the Ayatollah regime, the Trump administration will persist by ramping up its efforts to force the mullahs in Tehran back in line.
Nobody is a better partner to the United States than Israel and you, Mr. Prime Minister. I want to personally thank you on behalf of the President for everything that you're doing with us. As it relates to Iran, we have a shared view as to the threats that Iran poses to the region and to the world. We have executed on a maximum pressure campaign for sanctions. They have worked, they are working, they are cutting off the money. We are not doing this to hurt the people of Iran. We are doing this so that Iran stops their bad activities in exporting terrorism, looking to create nuclear capabilities and missiles. And we will continue to ramp up more, as you've said.
Now to Israel's northern neighbor, where Russian and Turkish forces have started patrolling a narrow corridor of some 10 kilometers, equal to 6.2 miles, along the Syrian-Turkish border. They referred to patrols sealed under an agreement that was reached last week between Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Turkish counterpart, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, prompted the deployment of additional Russian troops and armored vehicles in the northern part of the war-torn Syria. Meanwhile, the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, received a Russian military escort during a coordinated withdrawal from Ankara's efficient safe zone on the Syrian side of its border. The SDF forces said in a statement that Syrian government forces would fill the power vacuum by deploying in its place along the border with Turkey. Furthermore, it called on Russia to guarantee dialogue between the Syrian government and the Kurdish-led administration in northeast Syria. Despite the documented withdrawal, however, which was confirmed by both Damascus and Moscow, Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu insisted that Turkey could not yet verify whether all of the Syrian Democratic Forces, including its most powerful YPG militia, have withdrawn beyond the agreed-upon 30 kilometers security zone, equal to 18.6 miles.
Çekilenler de var. Rejim unsurları da bunu teyit ediyor. Rusya da teyit ediyor ama tamamen henüz tamamının çekildiğini söylemek mümkün değil. Bu konuda da zaten askerlerimiz arasında temaslar var. Şimdi Rusya'dan bir askeri heyet de geliyor. Hem bu çekilme konusunda son durum nedir? Bunu ele alacak arkadaşlarımız.
The Turkish top diplomat stressed that unless all of the Kurdish forces withdraw, Turkey will have no other choice but to clear them from Ankara's envisioned security zone by force. Minister Çavuşoğlu's threat this morning echoed his president's comments earlier this week, in which President Recep Tayyip Erdogan vowed to chase any terrorist organization that attacks Turkey from Syria to wherever they may flee. Speaking in the Turkish city of Istanbul, President Erdogan also threatened Europe that unless they support Turkey's security zone in Syria, both politically and financially, Ankara will open its borders and march the 3.6 million refugees into Europe.
Terör örgütü 30 kilometrelik hattın içinden veya dışından saldırılarını sürdürürse, nereye kadar kaçarlarsa oraya kadar kovalayıp gereğini yapacağız. Aynı şekilde ülkemizdeki 3 milyon 650 bin Suriyelinin ilk etapta 1 ile 2 milyon arasındaki kısmının geri dönüşü için geliştirdiğimiz projelere destek verilmezse sınırlarımızı açmaktan başka çaremiz kalmaz. Açarız sınırları, yürüsünler Avrupa'ya.
In other, yet related news, the United States will strengthen its military presence in eastern Syria with mechanized forces to prevent America's enemies from accessing oil fields and revenues. U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper made this statement over the weekend during a summit of defense ministers of NATO member states.
Ultimately, we always intended, as the President directed, to maintain a presence at the Antanf garrison. As I've said over the past several days, we are also considering how we might reposition forces in the area in order to ensure we secure the oil fields. We are now taking some actions, I'm not going to get into the details, to strengthen our position at Dar ez-Zor to ensure that we can deny ISIS access to the oil fields, because we want to make sure that they don't have access to the resources that may allow them to strike within the region, to strike Europe, to strike the United States.
A Pentagon official confirmed to TV7 that a so-called residual force will remain in the eastern part of Syria to properly secure the referred to oil fields from potential attacks, not only from the Islamic State, but potentially also from Russian-backed or Iranian-backed forces operating in the war-torn country. Thank you for watching us, praying for the peace of Israel and the peace of Jerusalem. Jonathan Hessen, have a Erev Tov, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.